Good afternoon and welcome to Alameda County's Giving Back program. I'm your host. My name is Bonnie Lacey. I have my co-host Madeline Welters, and our guest today is Brynn Boyle. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Very good. Tonight we wanted to ask you about the job you do here at the Berkeley Cinema program and what got you interested in wanting to help children. I know you come from the juvenile hall background, and can you tell us something else about what got you interested?
Yes, I actually do have one story that was very pivotal in my beginning to work and continuing through my life to work with young people. Mm-hmm. In the early 80s, there were a number of cults in the Bay Area. These cults were run by people that by adults, mm-hmm. For other adults. Yes. And sometimes there were children
in the cults.
In the
that were caught up.
That were caught up in this whole thing. And one of them was in Inverness, and this I was in a law firm. I was working in the city as in a law firm, and they had called me and said, well, there's some lawyers are sticking snakes in people's mailboxes, and it's getting really bad in this, and then we need to take care of this particular group of people. And so would you come in here and do the tape transcription, because I was doing typing at that time. Okay. By the way, I have a developmentally disabled son. At that point, he was 6 years old. He couldn't speak, and he couldn't turn over, and he couldn't walk. Okay. So what I did was kept him at home and typed. I typed for the university. I
do all the typing so you could be at home with your son.
Exactly. Okay. And then work with him when he wasn't at school, and then when he went to sleep, I'd start typing, and then the cycle would go over again. But I got a call at work asking me to come out to a home that a friend of mine worked at, a group home, mm-hmm. in Contra Costa County. It turned out that a young man had crawled 16 miles, what? No clothes on, no hair, nothing, no shoes, nothing, to get to this home. He had been in this. He was in a closet.
Was he crawling so he could stay undetected?
He couldn't walk. He had 2 broken arms and a broken knee. And he didn't know really where he was. I mean, this is a real horror story, but this is what was going on in the early 80s and late 70s. It wasn't about gangs and stuff like that so much as it was about individual bad choices individually on the part of adults. I think with children. Okay. And that's what I was seeing in the group homes. Okay. And this is, again, this is different from juvenile hall. This is another venue, group homes, but this kid was in a closet and he wouldn't let anybody in. And they'd let him in the door, and he was in a closet, and they called me up and said, will you please come, because the case that I was transcribing is where this kid had come from. So I went in, I left work and came out and went out and talked to him. He was in Concord, and about an hour and a half after we got done talking, I got him out of the closet into the garage. We started playing a pool and started talking, and that was it. I fell in love. I made an impact. He asked me to help him, mm-hmm. and he allowed me to help him, and he trusted me to help him, and it made such an impact on me to have that honor. Yeah. To be given that honor. Right.
To be trusted so much.
Of someone's mind, of being able to help someone's mind and help them work out, things that are not going so well. It's been very rewarding. And now, this is 30, 40 years later, I'm still doing it. Right.
Now,
I love it.
Did he give you the circumstances of how he got injured, or what happened?
Basically, he wanted to leave, and they were holding a lot of guns in that camp. Mm-hmm. And he found the gun cache, and they shaved his head and broke both of his legs so that he wouldn't leave. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, taking their clothes away is just, that's the way.
Because that's during the era of the Jim Jones.
That's right. That's exactly when it was.
And so,
exactly.
and that was fear, and you had families who were literally placed in situations where it was the adults making the decisions, and the children was just caught up in whatever decisions that the
the
parents
adults made.
That's
made.
right.
And so we know how that finally ended,
Yeah.
unfortunately, for so many lives
Mass
that were destroyed
suicide.
behind that.
That's true. And I came into working with children at the very end of that era when we started to try to put it together again so that there were group homes for those children, so that there were places for them to go, that their parents weren't functioning that well.
Right.
And so how could you expect
They
the
were
children to
afraid.
function as well? But yet they functioned just great after, we spent enough time with them. But what we did was we took 9 kids, and we took them, most of the kids were put into institutions. And so we took 9 kids a piece and kept them for 9 months. And I would work from Sunday night to Thursday night, and I would stay at the home.
Okay.
And then about 11 o'clock at night, they'd bring a kid, they'd drive up the ambulance door to the head of the house, and they'd open the back doors, and they'd slide out a kid in a straitjacket right into the door, and then I'd catch them at the very end when they came in, and they'd take the jacket and shut the door and go out, and I'd sit on the floor and just hold them until they stopped screaming. Sometimes 5 hours a night.
Screaming.
And then we were okay after that. I do have one story though that was kind of
They had
funny.
to release and feel comfortable.
They
That's
really
great.
did, and so then they left. They lived with us for a year. They lived with us for 9 months, and I have to say that the success of those programs were based on the fact that these people that worked those programs, there was the same 5 or 6 people always. So consistency was really
Yes.
important, number one. Number two, everybody had a sense of humor. Everyone had a sense of humor because,
you'd have
I
to.
mean, you have to have a sense of humor. Some of this stuff is just way too harsh not to have a sense of humor.
Did you have any success stories from some of the children that came back to say, I'm okay, I made it?
Yeah, I just have
While
one.
you're thinking of that, how did you wind up at juvenile hall working?
That's kind of a sad story. At many of the group homes, there wasn't a lot of regulation in group homes and running group homes. And because there wasn't a lot of regulation, you could lose your job by someone saying, I saw so-and-so at such and such a time doing such and such a thing, whether it was true or not. Mm-hmm. And I had a developmentally disabled son. I couldn't fool around. And I needed to have a job that was secure, and I wanted to do it in something that I loved. And so I made the move to juvenile hall because I wanted job security and to be able
work with children.
and to continue on. In fact, my mission was to become director of juvenile hall. That was my mission from day one. And I made sure everybody knew it. I was like, I want to be director of this hall. I love these kids. I love what's going on here. I can see where we can teach. I can see where we can make teaching. I mean, it was like a big, gigantic group home to me, you know. And in fact, I do have to say, a couple of months after I got there, I worked at the girls' camp, which then closed, and then I worked at the boys' camp. I was the second woman, I think. Sandra Owens was the first woman, and then I was the second woman to work at the boys' camp, and then they stopped that. And then Madeline and I became partners in about 1986, and we put together an educational program for the kids, and a rewards program that was not based on Baby Ruths
Candy.
or candy bars.
No. Yeah.
No, our kids needed to
Mental
we had there's a paper called, and you can look it all up on the computer if you want. In fact, I'd be thrilled if you did, called the Desiderata. It's a piece of paper, and it's basically a guide for life. It was found in an old church in Brooklyn in 1623, and it was very beautiful. We had 40 girls in the unit, or maybe about 38. And because they were pretty doubled up.
because we was always doubling up. That's
We're
when
always
they
doubling
had
up.
to sleep on cots and
In
mats
the-
out
in
there,
the-
didn't have enough rooms.
Yep.
In the day room.
And there wasn't anything they wouldn't do for, if you'd cook them a meal. So anyway, this is what happened. So anyway, we put together an educational program thing for them, so that every day when there was time to write letters or whatever, the kids came out. They wanted to.
Yes.
They wanted to write. If you don't want to write a letter, write a short story. Really? Or write, this to someone, or to this or to that. I mean, we opened up we tried to open up a world to them.
Yes.
Because their worlds were so small and so compact and contained. So we did things a little bit off the grid.
A lot of things off the grid.
When they,
but it worked.
But it worked, yeah. Well, like I said, a month into it, I was starting to say, it was a riot unit when we came in there. When we both got that unit, it was a riot unit, and a month later, it was no longer a riet unit.
Yeah.
It was proclaimed no longer a riot unit.
The stability of the staff and your willingness to want to do
We
something.
didn't take
when
day
you went
one
to that
off.
unit, people would hate to go into that unit when we arrived.
They hated it.
You know, and it got to the place where it was like, this doesn't make any sense. You know, because the reality is that everyone here was here for a reason. Whether you did something or did not, you're still here.
You still.
And so while you're here, why not make the best of it?
That's right.
And so programming became a fundamental necessity.
Yes.
You learn to teach children how to think outside the box. And there's life beyond juvenile hall. And it's a little bit maybe before its time, but it was a necessary.
Maybe it was a model though that you guys.
Well,
did
it
that.
worked.
It was.
I tell you, it worked. For 2 years straight, there was not one fight in that unit.
That's
and
right.
prior to us getting there, they
Not
were
one.
having riots at least once a week.
But you know what? Kids feel
was
comfortable
big.
when there's no fights and the staff is coming to work. They feel a stable, you know, they want to welcome a stable environment.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
You
it
know?
wasn't just a stable. It wasn't just a stable environment, although that was a big part of it. I don't know about. I think that we didn't basically want to miss a day, because if you miss 2 or 3 days, you get sick. I mean, that's all there is to it.
It was fun. I mean,
And
people
it was
used to
fun.
race.
We had a
People
good
used to
time with the
race
kids.
to come into the hall to do programming with our kids.
Yep, they
I
did.
mean,
Some of the other staff you guys worked with in there was you.
Dwight,
We had Dwight Akins.
Dwight Akins,
Oh yeah.
Albert
and,
Dennis,
and what's her name?
McGee.
Miss Anglero,
Okay.
Carballo,
Carballo, Miss Wiggin.
Wiggins,
Oh, yeah.
and Dwight Akins, and there's Albert Dennis. He was a supervisor, actually. And what was her name? That you know who I'm talking
Betty
about.
something. Miss Taylor.
Yeah.
Miss Taylor was in there quite frequently. Miss Granville was in there.
Yes, she was.
But the whole concept was that the goal was to have children think about long-term goals.
Once they left the hall.
And the hall was a place where you could take time to sit down. And you would have kids sit down. What do you plan on doing the next 5 years? How are you going to get there?
Yeah.
You know, what it is you need so you don't have to come back.
These kids, when we had them, they didn't even, when Madeline and I started working with these kids, they didn't know how to read the classifieds. I mean, we actually literally read the classified ads to them and said, okay, you ready to go out? You ready? You all ready to leave? Fine, great. Whoever can get through the classifieds, we'll see. Well, we'll talk for you. No one could get through the classifieds. No one could get through the classifieds. The classifieds ads always have these little SF, means San Francisco, one BDR bedroom, one half with nothing. That's 1.5 baths.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about that.
Yeah.
They didn't know anything about it. By the time we were done, they were able to do that. The one thing that we did that I actually took a chance on, we spent a lot of our own
Money.
We spent a lot of our own money there. There were so many children who did not have parents
come and
on
visit
Christmas or on Mother's Day or Father's Day. We made sure they had a good Father or Mother's Day and birthdays and Christmases. We made sure of that. So anyway, the Desiderata, the story that I didn't finish, it's about, must be about 20 sentences long. And we had kids from 8 to 30 in there. 8 to 30, 8 to 18. I say 30, the oldest girl that we had was very large and had a lot of problems. But she came around. She came around, and I guess it was the versatility between Madeline and I working with each other and agreeing that each child had their own needs and their own importance and their own specialness, and that we were going to do the best that we could to bring that out in them. And because of that, the kids knew that, and they knew that we were respecting that, and they helped us with that. So on the time the Desiderata came out, I said, all right, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a Big Mac, an order of fries, and a milkshake, but you got to memorize this. And you got 2 weeks to do it. And so I took each group of kids, we talked about it, and we had some kids that were very high functioning, some kids that couldn't read very well, so we'd give them 2 or 3 lines, and the kids that were very high functioning, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the other kids that, everybody was at the top of their game.
Yes.
Cost me $114.32 in those days.
And you can
those
remember
kids
that.
remembered everything. I could not believe it. They were just so eager to learn, and they gave no one any problems. Everybody was, why is this unit like this? Well, it's not because we bribed them. It wasn't because of the McDonald's even. They didn't have to do that for that. They wanted to do it, and they wanted to know. And it just became a very beautiful part of what we were doing. We were talking about this earlier. I used to read to them before bedtime. Madeline would bring books in sometimes, and sometimes I go to the library. Do you know that there's 17 different Cinderellas in the world? Vietnam has its own Cinderella. China has its own Cinderella. Japan, Mexico. All these different countries have their own fairy tales that we think are completely just American. It's not true, folks.
Right.
It's not true. It didn't start and end here. Everybody thinks this is America. It started and ended here. It did not. America is built up of people from other places.
And
Other places.
And I think that was the key, because one of the things we did is we celebrated every nationality
Yes.
that we could think
Yes, we
of
did.
in that unit.
But you know what, they appreciate that. Even when you do like Day of the Dead, which is a very important holiday for the Mexican Americans.
Right.
And then you have Cinco de Mayo, then you have Juneteenth that celebrates when the slaves was freed in Texas. But everybody needs to know, and then some kids, they don't know that history.
You know,
They
but,
don't know,
but
and they
when you
wanna
do
know.
that, you develop a mutual respect for each other, and that was the key. You had to have a mutual respect. And one of the things that I really thought was really important, that they were able to monitor their own behavior. Because we came up with a system. You know, they always had their point system. We developed our own. Because the reality of that system is that no child at all times is going to be 100% of anything.
No.
But you can foster the concept that I can be better than I was yesterday, today.
Yeah.
And if I'm better today, then I'll be better tomorrow.
Right.
And so what you began to see, and we would gauge, we just, and so we created a chart. It was a simple chart with different color stars. And we will post it out there for them to look at.
That's right.
And you can monitor your own behavior. I shouldn't have to tell you what you're doing.
That's right.
Because if you've been here a while, you know what you're doing and what you're not doing. And the goal then became to, because we did averages. So the goal was for you to remain above the average. And if you remained above the average, at the end of the week, you were rewarded for being above the average. That didn't say that you didn't get in trouble.
Right. You could have.
But what started happening was less and less people fell below the average.
That's right.
And so what you had,
each other.
and that was it.
But you know what? Sometimes you have the person who wants to be the fool and wants to be the fool, and then have anybody else that don't want to be the fool with you. Then it was, shoot, I don't want to be the only fool.
Well, that happened.
I got to build up. I want to get to where everybody else is, because if I'm the only fool or the only one acting out, I don't want to be by myself.
You know, we had a lot of fun. I mean, we took the kids to the gym. We took the kids. I did a lot. We did a lot of physical stuff with the kids, and a lot of we'd cook in there. We'd bring butterfish in and cook so that because I had a thing about.
Oh yeah, I remember the carnival. Remember the carnival?
Yeah.
We created a carnival for our side, not just our unit, but for the people said it couldn't be done.
Yeah, A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
No.
1, 2, 3, and 4. That's right.
On the new side.
On the new side.
Yeah, the little
They
kids.
said it couldn't be done. It was going to be all kinds of disaster. The
could be a
kids
mess.
had a ball. I think the staff had more fun than the kids did.
They did.
You know,
because they got to just give it a chance. Once you put something down, say, okay, and you work at it, say, okay, I want to do this, do it, then end it, then it's successful.
You know,
it was thought
fun.
out. It was thought out. We had troubleshot it.
Yeah.
You know, before it was executed, it was thought out. It was troubleshot.
Yes.
In other words, we talked about what are we going to do if this happens or that happens. We had already covered all that, so we weren't going in there just blind. And the reward for this was, it wasn't just one unit. You know, there's one girls unit, only one girls unit, but the other 3 units were boys units.
Yeah.
And so,
The younger
in
boys
order for
and then
the younger boys, right, and then and then there was one other unit, but they were so happy to get together.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an acting out happy. It was a, how do we do this? How do we talk? So it became another chance to learn.
Yeah.
Social
Another
skills.
way to learn social skills. Okay, let's do that. What do we have? Who was that kid?
Interacting with each other.
Who was that kid that when he jumped up on the thing and said, do you have all, we took the girls over to the boys unit to see this one kid that grew up to become a pretty famous rapper, and I'll remember his name in a
Too
second.
short?
No, we can't remember that. We're not supposed to mention their names.
Okay.
But yeah.
I don't
we-
remember, but
yeah.
what he did was he was dancing. He was dancing. The kids were sitting in the line. They were very happy about this, and this kid was sitting up there, and he started singing, and they all recognized him. And then all of a sudden, all these pagers, you know, they were talking about pagers and stuff, and he goes, yeah, you got my pager, you got my pager number. All these girls had his pager number. Almost all the girls in our unit had his pager number. I couldn't believe it. But he could sing, and it was just one of those funny things.
But
that
it
he
created a good conversation, because
It
what
did.
it did later on when they came back, we discussed it.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from that interaction?
did. Right. And
You
some
have
of them
to
were
know.
jealous.
So, yeah, and you have
Some
to
of
deal
them
with
weren't.
those. You know, you have
Some
to
of the
deal with
boys
that.
was jealous.
Some of the girls
Some
were
of the girls were
jealous.
jealous because they thought that they were the only one. Reality is when you are
There you
into
go.
acting with other people,
Right.
always be aware you might not be the only one. So what you going to do with it? If you were on the street, how would you handle it?
Exactly.
And so we began to be able to talk about what are you going to do when it happens on the outside. And it
How you
begins to
gonna
create, right, and it began to create an atmosphere of, you know what, I have to think beyond today,
Yeah.
because that's what's real.
And yeah, that's true. And one of the biggest things that came out of this was our recidivism rate went way down.
That's
And
yeah,
even though it
really,
wasn't
really
mentioned, it
important.
was not mentioned, and it wasn't given to either one of us or we didn't, you know, I would have been nice. I
To
would have
hear,
loved
yes.
somebody to have come and said to Madeline and I, what have you done in this unit? We'd like to know what you're doing in this unit, because your recidivism rate is
I must
low.
admit, you know, once I
lot of
had,
these kids
I had
didn't
one
come back.
caseworker that came in and said, what is going on? I said, what do you mean? Why, the kids, I'm hearing about, they're doing these programs, because one of the things
they're
that
sweet.
I did and was allowed to do, we were allowed to take, those Polaroid, used to take
Yes,
pictures of them.
yes.
Yeah.
Right?
We
And
could.
every time that you made above the average, your picture was up there.
Yep.
You got a star on there. And when you got ready to go home, you took that picture with you. Do you know how many kids have never seen themselves?
We just take for
It's pretty
granted
amazing.
that kids see themselves or all of that, and they don't. They
And
want,
they-
they want to see themselves.
And that was their reward. I mean, the pack of film was $10. The pack of little stars was $1.29.
yeah.
And out of that, for
Something
2 years, a unit that had been riotous
Now calm.
is now calm, and
Not one right.
and now people was talking about, can I go and work in there?
Yeah, then they wanted us out of there.
Out of there.
Then they wanted us out of there so they could go in and work in there, and it became a whole other ball of wax. But the reality was there was, you know, they were having to call boys control all the time to come in there and break up fights, and you know what that means? That's just a war between the girls and the counselors, and you could create that anywhere, any prison, even any prison or juvenile hall, whether it's for young people or adults. They can create this. You can create this yourself. You can create it yourself, or you can create it, or you can not create it, and you can address it. And we did address it.
But you know what else? You guys had such a successful program. They should have said, okay, you guys are doing so well. We want you to come and teach the other counselors how to get to your level.
You know, we wanted to do that.
That's what they should have done.
We wanted to do that, but they did not want that done
You know, and so what I've
for
learned,
whatever reason.
from what I learned, but that was the same thing as years later on when I was given the,
We wanted to.
you know,
I still have the box.
I had to move back over and I began to supervise the boys down in B2 when they had 58 kids down there.
Whoa.
Oh, we had 58 boys in that unit. Every gang member that they had mixed them all together. And the bottom line was this: hey, we cannot just keep saying we're not going to have fights. 'Cause I'm not going to have a fight down in here. Because
Right.
there is the only gang I'm recognizing in Alameda County down here is Alameda County.
Alameda County.
And we all part of that gang.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So all that gang, this is neutral territory.
Yeah.
Everybody is safe. I'm not going to tolerate it. And we're going to sit down and talk. And so what we did was we began to have sessions where we would sit
Yes.
and talk. Using that same type of point system, every Saturday morning, we would break them up into groups. And I taught the staff how to talk to the minors so they can express themselves
Right.
without having to do that.
And I don't think that would have happened if we hadn't have really taken the chance and gone up against a whole lot of people to do the programs that we did. We got support from teachers. The evidence was there. I mean, there was was nothing in the books saying there was no way that we could be doing anything that wasn't right. I mean, the books tell it all.
You know, then you use evidence. Now they refer to it as evidence-based practices.
Yes.
And that's great, but that's what we were doing before, because this is stuff that we had
Just had to put a
discovered
label on it.
that had
It was before its time.
Yeah.
been working. I mean, if it works, then use it.
But just the fact that you had them interacting with each other, different gang members, and the main thing that she talked about is reading the story. Sometimes that's so
Absolutely.
soothing, and that
So they
goes
can
back
sleep at
to
night.
when they were younger children.
Exactly.
Something soothing so they can relax and go to sleep.
We did not want those kids to go to sleep with the horrors that were going through their heads that were many times imagined horrors.
Yes.
Many times they were imagined, sometimes they were not.
Yeah.
But we wanted them to be able to wake up with a clean mind and go to sleep with a clean mind, with something that was different. So they'd get Greek fairy tales or, Greek mythology. We're not
But
talking
you know
everything
what?
fairy tales. I mean, we read Martin Luther King during Black History Month.
But you know what? Just the reading is soothing, period, because my
Oh,
sister
yeah.
had cancer in her lymph nodes. And so when she would go and be waiting for her x-ray, I would just start reading any book. And the other women would listen, and it was just relaxing.
And I'm
Always.
hopefully, these are just some ideas that people can use even today.
Hopefully they'll start using them.
So
Yes.
we're glad to have the opportunity to just
talk
share some
about
ideas and
some of the good
programs that actually can and have taken place in the past.
And this can still work today.
Absolutely.
And I really hope that they're brought back.
Evidence-based programs, but you have been
Evidence-based.
thinking out of the box.
I've still got a big
Let's
box
think it out
this
of the
big.
box.
Big box full of programming from Unit 2. Just
so
waiting.
it
I wanna
works.
see it.
I'd be happy to bring
want
it
to
in.
see it.
I'm
Well, I want to thank you for being our guest. And I'm Bonnie Lacey, and we're talking about some of the programs that were going on in juvenile hall and what made us want to work with youth.